Hello, everyone. In this week's Parsha, Parsha's Truma, a very, very interesting Parsha. And essentially, you have over here, so Hashem tells Moshe to tell the Jewish people, Ve'ikuli Truma. And so I should take for me Truma, and Me'ikuli Shaitan Ba'atichul Trumasi. So, from any man who his heart lifts him, right, to be generous, that's whom we should take the truma from. So, essentially, it's a very, very interesting idea. This idea, and there's a few questions that could be asked over here, and the first one really is that l'chayra. So Rashi says li means li lishmi. So we have to understand what that really means, because we obviously know that Rashi is saying that obviously when Hakadosh Baruch Hu says v'yichuli doesn't mean for me, because Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need anything from us. So li is lishmi, for my name's sake. So we maybe get an understanding, what does that mean? But Viter is interesting, which is that truma is conventionally understood as something that you give to the kayan, right? Truma gedola, and you don't take truma. You take the person's mammon, or your mafresh it, and then once you're mafresh his mammon, it becomes truma, and then truma automatically goes to the kohen gadol. It's his. It's his property. The idea over here of that Hakadosh Baruch Hu was telling the Jewish people to take truma is l'chayra a very confusing thing to say, because you're not taking it when it's truma, because truma refers to the act of it being separated for the sake of kedusha of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. In this context, usually it would be for kayin. In this context, it would be for the Beis Hamikdash. So if truma itself, the word tairim, refers to the act of hafrasha of something for the sake of kedusha from the rest of what is chol, then taking truma doesn't make any sense, because the act of taking is what makes it truma. What it sounds like is that something is already truma, and then you want me to take the truma and go towards the Beis Hamikdash. Well, that makes no sense, because what makes the thing truma before you take it? I think that's another kasha. Now, we have one more thing we have over here is the pasuk says that me'ez kol ish asher yidveru libo tichus trumasi. Right, so it's a very interesting idea. Basically, what the pasuk is saying is that I want you to take truma from people who their hearts are generous. So it's a very it's pretty modern thing if you think about it, because we almost never say in Yiddishkeit that it has to be that I have this this emotional feeling of connection to the thing, in order to do the mitzvah. We always say that the chutz must be on the inside, etc. That if it's a mitzvah, you do it no matter what, and then that's how mitzvahs you always are. Meaning, it's very, very strange that there should be a prerequisite of an emotional feeling of genuine desire, to do it when it comes to mitzvahs in general of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why is that unique to this situation? Then, if we go on to we go into some of the midrashim here, we have the midrash that says the following thing. It says, "Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael," over there. Macharti lechem tairasi kaviyachol nimkarti ima. I sold you my Torah, and kaviyachol I sold myself with it. Shenamar v'yicholi truma. So it's a mashal melech shahayu lebas yechida. Was the melech had a single daughter, and one of the kings came and took her, married her. So he wanted to go back to his land and take his wife with him. So Amar Loi, the king said to him, it's my only daughter. I can't be punished from her. I can't tell you not to take her because she's your wife. Now do me this one favor. Anywhere you go, Kitun Echad Asayli Sha'adar Etzlechem. Sha'ani Yachol Lahaneches Biti, because I can't leave my daughter. So Kach Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, Sati Lachem Es HaTorah. I gave you the Torah. But Lifresh Yimana in Yachol. Can't tell you not to take it, but I can't separate myself from it either, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. El B'chol Makom She'atam Holchim Ba'es Echad Asuli Sha'adar B'sochim. Sh'nemar V'asali Mikdash. So essentially, what the Midrash is saying is something that's extremely fascinating, and it's a bit of a really kind of a not so intuitive understanding of the way that we perceive the Mishkan, because simply speaking, we perceive the Mishkan as being, the place where Karbanos happen, and Karbanos represent an entirely different section, so to speak, or manner of which we relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is through the idea of avoda. Right? Avoda is, davening refers to karbanos, but that seems to be, intuitively the way that we think about the ikar idea of the Mishkan. Yet the Medrash is telling us that the whole idea of the creation and the taking of the truma for a Mishkan is because God simply cannot separate himself from the Torah that he gave us. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah, and now he can't separate himself from that Torah. So you know what he does? He says, make me a Mishkan. So that would seem to imply that the entire point of the Mishkan is for the sake of, encompassing having the Aron there. And the Aron is where the Shekhinah rests, and therefore it's essentially a manner in which we can continue to have the Torah, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with us as an attachment of the Torah. So that seems to be a little bit, we don't really have to understand what that means, and how does that stem with our general understanding of the Mishkan and of the Beis HaMikdash as a makom for this other type of way of relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is avoda, which is the simple understanding of, what happens in the Mishkan in terms of karbanos, etc. So I think that question has to be asked, and really it has to be further asked, is that how is it really working? In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I can't be left alone. I can't leave my daughter alone. So how does it work, and what does it really mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, so to speak, still attached or still with the Torah through the fact that we create a Mishkan? Right? I mean, that doesn't really seem like it has any non-esoteric, meaningful implication for us as a life lesson. I mean, what does that mean, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't be Parish, and how is the Mishkan addressing that? So, I think in order to answer the question, we have a fascinating Ramban over here. But before we get to the Ramban, it has to be understood what the concept of Har Sinai was. And once we see the Ramban, we understand why it's important that we saw that. And we actually spoke about this last week or 2 weeks ago, and we basically analyzed the Rashis and the Chumash and Parshas Mishpatim. And we basically saw that B'yetem, the idea of Har Sinai was not the event of Kabbalas HaTorah. The event of Kabbalas HaTorah happened on Yom Kippur with the Luchos Shniyos, which was a lot of time later. And Nasa V'Nishma, we saw in Rashi, was said on parshas of the Sefer Bereshis and on the mitzvahs of Mara, and a small section of Shmos that occurred up until Matan Torah, which does not include most of the actual mitzvahs, and that's what they said Nasa V'Nishma on. So the event of Har Sinai was not the event of Kabbalas HaTorah; it was the event of Nesinas HaTorah, and we're now going to explain really what that means. And then we're going to see how it has relevance over here. And the underlying aside of what that statement means is the following thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he came down to Har Sinai, and he gave us the luchos. What occurred at the event was the idea and was the concept of the krisa, the making of a bris. Right, when we look at the pasuk, and we see what it says that the Jewish people said nasa v'nishmatu, right? So it says, let's see what it says. It says that Moshe took. Moshe took. Veikach. What did he take? Sefer HaBeris. You can see it here. And it says he said the name of the Bezdei. He called it Sefer HaBris. So the Sefer HaBris. So what does that mean? The Sefer HaBris is the book of the bris, the covenant. And a bris is essentially a commitment to a relationship between two parties in a manner that it is tied to something that makes it that relationship can never be broken. That is the definition of a bris. That is the actual definition of a bris, which means the following thing. The event of Har Sinai was really the event of the creation of a bris, which means a non-breakable relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. That was the entire event of Har Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes down, he's married his Shekhinah all the way down to the lowest mountain of the Har Sinai, and he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Jewish people through Moshe, do you guys, and this is essentially what it means that they said Nasa v'nishmatu, Bereshis, and everything until Matan Torah and the Mitzvah Shnei Tzavos Gemara. Those things basically represent the basic idea of, do you guys want a relationship with me? That's the Shaila. That is the entire question. Do you want a relationship with me? Yes or no? And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't at the time talk to them about doing the rest of the mitzvahs, which is why later HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to force upon them the mountain, which is the Gemara in Shabbos, which is a different sugya. But what happened in Har Sinai was HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked the Jewish people, do you want a relationship with me? And to that, the Jewish people, like the Gemara in Shabbos says, I'm a Pazizat, the Jewish people, without even giving it a second thought, said, yes, we want a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We will do whatever you tell us to do because we trust in you and we want a relationship. And that's what occurred, which means that the entire event of Har Sinai is the event of Nesinas HaTorah. You know what Nesinas HaTorah means? Nesinas HaTorah means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us something through which our acceptance of that thing makes it that we have a relationship with him which is unbreakable, because it is contingent upon the reality of us observing the Torah, and in us keeping and doing that Torah, that gives us an inherent relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that's what those things do. Everything that it was, Bereshis, which is the Jewish identity of the Avos, and everything that they committed to, the fact that we are those Avos and we come from those Avos makes it that. The Mitzvah Gemara, everything up until Matan Torah, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Torah, which is, without getting too esoteric, in a manner, is a description of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and it is the way that people can be makir him, and once we dedicate ourselves and promise to keep it, we therefore make ourselves part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. That is essentially what occurred, which means that Nesinas HaTorah and Kabbalas HaTorah are two completely different events, and they mean two totally different things. The reality of Nesinas HaTorah, which is the Chag of Shavuos, which is what we celebrate in Sivan, which was what happened in Parashas Yisro, that is a celebration, and if you look at the Nusach, you'll see it says, Zman Matan Toraseinu. which is a huge kasha. It's a pella. It should say Zman Kabbalas Torah Seinu. Look at the Nusach Tefillah for Shavuos and Shalosh Regalim. You'll see it says Zman Matan Torah Seinu, the time of the giving of our Torah. What are you talking about? Shouldn't it say the time of the accepting of our Torah? The answer is no, it shouldn't. You know why? Because we didn't accept the Torah on Shavuos. But you know what we did accept? We accepted HaKadosh Baruch Hu's offer of a bris, which means an unbreakable relationship, which is the basis of all of Judaism. And it is the basis of really the Torah in its essence. And it means just what it means in the most simple of ways, which is that the essence of Yiddishkeit is the idea that a person, just like he has a relationship with his brother and his mother and his sister, he has a relationship with God. And God is a being who wants a relationship with us as a Jewish people and as individuals. And we are committed to having a relationship with him, which means taking into account his desires for the world, his underlying desires, his desires for us, how he wants us to behave, what he wants us to do, just like we would do with our wife or kids or any other relationship. And that is a basic tenet that has to be mastered before you go on to, dikdukim and this and that thing and that. You have the basic yesod is, I want a relationship with God, and I maintain a relationship with God. And that is the entire side of Har Sinai. Now, keeping that in mind, we can look at this Ramban. And the Ramban says the following thing. He says like this. He says that over here. He says, Ve'hine ikar ha'chefetz. Here you see the blue. The main chefetz of Mishkan hu makom menuchas hashchina shua arum. Says the main chefetz of the Mishkan is the place where the rest for the Arum, which is where the Shechina rests. Okay. And he says like this. V'soyed ha-Mishkan hu. And the basic secret, the understanding of the Mishkan is sheyiyeh ha-kavod, that it will be that the kavod, the honor, meaning the Shechina, asher shachan, that came down on Har Sinai, shoychein alav b'nistar. Says the Ramban, the Ikar Yesod of the Mishkan is that the same Shechina that came down in Har Sinai, and the day that it gave us the Torah, which is why I wanted to define the Yesod of Har Sinai, because the Ramban says it's that Shechina that came down in Har Sinai, that same Shechina, the Ikar Yesod, the side of the Mishkan is that Shechina that came down in Har Sinai should now be Sheichen in the Mishkan as well, B'nistar. That's what he says. Hey, Naranu Hashem Elokeinu is called the Ves Gadla. Kain Kosa B'Mishkan also says the same thing by the Mishkan, says the Ramban. Uchvayid Hashem Leis HaMishkan. Right? And it says not only that, V'Hizker B'Mishkan Shnei Pa'amim, he says the Ramban, it mentions by the Mishkan twice, Uchvayid Hashem Leis HaMishkan, the honor of Hashem filled the Mishkan, and it says it twice, Keneged, that's the counter, its counterparts are, as Kvodo Ves Gadla, which is a pasuk by Har Sinai. V'haya b'mishkan tamid in Yisrael, and then it will be in the Mishkan all the time with the Jewish people. Ha-kavod, the honor, the Shechina, shenir lehem b'Har Sinai. And so that's the Ramban says. I'm showing you Mefurish over here. So therefore, the conclusion that we're reaching is the following yesod based off the Ramban and our Taich of Har Sinai. And this is where the Medrash. This is how the Medrash reaches its conclusion. The Medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, he says to them, guys, I can't separate from my Torah. So therefore, you have to make for me a Mishkan. And we try to understand. The question we're asking is, what does that really mean? How does that work? And the answer is that the underlying yesod, the underlying truth of what the Torah really is that it is the binding material which enforces the bris aspect of the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is very, very deep to understand this. we, unfortunately, a lot of us, and we spoke about this a little bit last time as well, is that a lot of us, unfortunately, what ends up happening is that instead of understanding that the ikr of Yiddishkeit is to have a relationship with God, and that the dikdukim of the Torah are coming as an expression of that, a lot of times we get caught up in the details and the religious aspects of what it is, and we kind of make a whole thing about it, and we forget the Ikar Yesod of Har Sinai and of Derech Eretz, which is what we spoke about last time. And we're not going to explain fully how those two things connect now, but they do. We focus on the details at the expense of the Ikar. And what we have to realize is that the main aspect, the main idea of the Torah and of our keeping of the Torah is that it is the binding material which binds us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that our relationship can never break. That's really the truth of it. In other words, the Ikar of Har Sinai was that the Jewish people said Na'aseh v'nishma. And what did they say Na'aseh v'nishma to? An unbreakable relationship with God. They committed, just like when two people get married, they commit to be in a relationship with their wives and their husbands for the rest of their life. So too, the Jewish nation committed to be in a relationship with God for the rest of its existence, until the end of reality as we know it. We committed to be in an unbreakable relationship. And in order for that relationship to be unbreakable, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a Torah which hashes out schar and onesh and creates a dynamic which makes it that we can never not be in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this underlying aspect of the koyach of the Torah as being the mesh and the glue that binds us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be brought out by this Medrash Eicha. The Medrash Eicha says it like this. It says, Rebbe Chia bar Abba Amri, in the blue over here. Ksiv v'osi azavu v'estorasi lo shemaru. It says in Yirmiyah, me they forsook, they left me, they never, and then they didn't keep my Torah. And the way the Chazal Darshan is like this. They darshan alavai osi azavu. God, so to speak, is saying, I wish that they would abandon me, v'sarasi shemaru, and they would just keep my Torah. Mitoch shayim is asking ba, because the fact that they would be dealing with and harving in the Torah, hama'ar shabayim achzir lemutav, the ma'ar, the light within it, would bring them back to Tov. So you see, what is being said over here is Chazal are telling you a very, very essential insight. They're saying like this. They're saying that the essence of the Torah is as meant to be as a document that it has the koyach, that even if a person would forsake HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever it is, ideologically, etc., but he would be Isaac for Torah, ultimately he'll be Machzir Lemutav. Why? Because the Torah is itself the aspect of the relationship that we have with God, which makes it a bris. That's why it's the Sefer HaBris. It creates it into a bris, because the definition of bris is an unbreakable relationship. That is the Ikar Yesod. But the main understanding we have to realize is that the underlying concept that gives Yiddishkeit its chayim and its definition is that it is defined as someone whom is in an unbreakable relationship with God. And it starts there. And that's where, and everything else is details. And that's what a person has to understand. And there are many, many Gemaras about this by Hillel, that someone went to the Megayer, and Hillel said, the guy said, teach me the entire Torah on one foot. And Hillel tells him, he says, I think he says, "V'hafta l'recha kamoecha." I think that's what he told him. And Rashi says that the reacha is referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or it means it's slightly different. But the Gemara basically brings out the Ikar Yesod that the entirety of Torah is meant as a manner in which we can unbreakably be in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we know that also because the Avos kept Karta Akula, even their Abanans, even though they didn't have a Torah that was given to them, but it was as a Taitzah of their unbreakable relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and their commitment to Him, that the Shmir of the Torah mitzvahs were a Taitzah of that. Because, and this is obvious, the keeping of the Torah mitzvahs is the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, if you're in a relationship with Him and you're doing what He wants you to do because you love Him and you want Him in your life, then you will end up doing the mitzvahs. You'll figure it out and you'll end up doing the mitzvahs because that is His Ratzon. And that is how mitzvahs have to be done. Mitzvahs must be done because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon. Not for schar, not for olam haba, not for all of that is shalei lishma, and it's a very, very, it's not the level that is expected of Klal Yisrael. So that's the maskan over here, and I hope that for Musar Haskel that we begin to realize that no matter what we're doing and how much we're doing, if it's not driven by a extremely human, basic, real, underlying, simple feeling of a desire to have a relationship with a being called HaKadosh Baruch Hu, called God, if that's not at the root of our efforts of what we're doing, then it's not going to be anything. Because that is the Ikar Yesod that has to be at the root of all of our Yiddishkeit and Shabbos.